Hi, we're going to start today with a little bit of factoring, and I know absolutely that you have all factored before. Today we're going to talk about factoring the way Cathedral High School approaches it. I know, because I've been a teacher for a long time, that there are lots of ways to approach factoring trinomials. However, I also know, because I've been a teacher for a long time, that a lot of the little tricky things don't end up working for us. And that's probably why some of you miss the stuff on the proficiency test, is because whatever techniques you learned before, you forgot or couldn't figure out how to apply them in the problem or whatever. So we're going to do this the way Cathedral does it. In the end, the objective is to get the problem factored. At Cathedral High School, every trinomial will be factored using this procedure. So I'm going to ask you to pay attention and to try to make this make sense to you, because it's going to make your life at Cathedral easier. All right, so here we go. This is a first problem on our factoring worksheet, and it is a trinomial, and I know I'm going to use 2 parentheses because this is going to be a reverse FOIL process. I know that when I have 2 parentheses and I FOIL them together, multiply them, distribute them together, I get x squared minus 2x plus 3x minus 6. I get my little trinomial. I want to do this same process in reverse. So I'm going to say to myself, what do I need to put here and here? There are 4 positions in the problem. What do I need to put here and here so that when I FOIL it together, I will get 2x squared? There's an x and an x. When it gets FOILed, it gives you the x squared. So what am I going to put here and here so that when I FOIL it, I get 2x squared? Well, you don't have any choice. It has to be 2x and x. Now let's look at the end of the problem. Forget the middle. Look at the end of the problem. Whatever you put here and here has to multiply together to give you -3. Just like when you did this FOIL process, this times this gave you this number. Remember, we're doing this in reverse. So first times first gives you first. And last times last gives you last. Now we'll worry about the middle in a minute. But what times what gives me -3? Well, you don't have any choice. Well, you sort of do, I guess. It could be -3 and +1, or +3 and -1. So let's just go with -3 and +1. Now, when I FOIL this together, FOIL, first outside, inside, last, I get 2x squared plus 2x minus 3x minus 3. That adds up to 2x squared minus x minus 3. That is not my problem. My problem was 2x squared plus x minus 3. So what does that mean? That means I've got all the numbers in exactly the right places because I got the right numbers. I just don't have my sign quite right in the middle. So instead of being a -3 and a +1, it must be a +3 and a -1. Now when I FOIL, I get 2x squared minus 2x plus 3x minus 3, which gives me my problem, my original problem. So there is the factorization. Now, I know I blabbed a lot on that problem. A lot of that you're going to do in your head, especially as you practice a little bit more. But those are the steps, that is the thought process that we encourage you to have here at Cathedral High School. So let's move on to the next problem. All right, so here we go. We're going to use exactly the same thought process because, again, every time you do one of these at Cathedral, this is going to be your strategy. So here we go. Here are my two parentheses. Remember, first times first gives you 3x squared. So again, no choice. It must be 3x and x. That gives you 3x squared. Now, forget the middle, go to the end. How are you going to get 20? Well, 20 has a lot of options, actually. So let's think about this for a minute. The first thing that pops into my head when I think of 20 is 5 times 4. Now, I don't know if you thought of 2 times 10 or maybe 20 times 1. There are options. And you just have to think about this for a minute, which option is going to be the one that works. So I'm going to go with my first gut instinct, which was 5 times 4. And I'm going to think about putting the 5 here and the 4 here. Now, keep in mind, that's a positive 20. So these are either going to both be positives or they're going to both be negatives. Now, obviously, if they were both positives, there'd be no way to get a negative in the answer, so they must be both negative. Now, let's FOIL and see if I got the numbers in the right spots. Here we go. 3x squared minus 12x minus 5x plus 20. Now there's the 3x squared and the 20, exactly like I knew would happen. But look what's in the middle, not 19. Okay, so now I got to think about this for a minute. I got a little problem solving. Either I've got the wrong numbers. Remember, I picked 5 and 4, but I had other choices, or I got them in the wrong spots. Let's switch them and see what happens. Let's put the 4 here and the 5 here. Now, that is not going to change my 3x squared, and it's not going to change my positive 20. But it is going to change those middle numbers. Now I have a negative 15 and a negative 4. Wait a minute, what's that? Yes, that's my negative 19, so there is my factorization. Okay, little bit of problem solving here. All right, let's try the next one. 6x squared. Now this one, 6 is one of those numbers that, you know, we got choices with it, so it's not quite as easy as the 3 was a minute ago. We've got some choices. So when I think of 6, I think of 2 times 3, so I'm just going to go with that. Now remember, I've been teaching now, this will be my 36th year, and every time I factor one of these, it's still a trial and error process. It's all about problem solving. It's all about thinking, planning ahead. No tricks, no gimmicks. It's all about using my common sense. So here we go. Now, let's see. I got to end up with a 6 on the end, which means maybe I'll go with 3 and 2 again. Now, I got to be careful here. That's a negative 6. So that means either the 3 is positive and the 2 is negative, or vice versa. And I don't know. I'm going to figure it out in a minute. So I'm just going to, okay, I'm going to put the 3 positive and the 2 negative. Here we go. Let's FOIL. I get 6x squared minus 4x, that's outsides, minus 4x, plus 9x minus 6. So there's my 6x squared and my minus 6. I knew that. That's perfect. But what's here in the middle? Ooh, I'm really close, aren't I? I'm really close. I have a 5x, but it's positive. So remember our other example? If you've got the right number, but your sign is wrong, just switch your signs. Make that the negative and that the positive. And sure enough, there we've got it. All right. One more like that, and then we got a couple different kinds. Here we go. This one is a little bit different because it points out the first rule of all factoring is if you have a greatest common factor, take it out. So when I look at this problem, I see everything there has a 2 as one of its factors. So I'm going to pull out the 2. Now please don't forget to do that. at some point you have to do it. Do you have to do it first? No. But if you do it first, it makes your work a lot easier. Because now instead of dealing with a 20, you're dealing with a 10. And what's the big deal, you say? Well, there are a lot more factors of 20 than there are of 10. So it's easier to approach the problem if you have it broken down a little bit. So we're going to carry that 2 along for the ride, so don't forget about him. Our energy right now is going to be focused on this. So here are my 2 parentheses. I've got a 10. When I think about 10, I think about 2x and 5x. Now I've got a negative 1 on the end. It doesn't get any better than 1 because your options are 1 and 1. That's it. But it is a negative 1, which means one of these is positive and one of them is negative. Now this time I'm going to think ahead a little bit because I've been practicing. I'm going to think ahead a little bit. I need a negative 3. When I FOIL, I'm going to get a 2 and a 5. One of those is positive and one of those is negative. If I need to end up with a negative 3, don't I want my 5 to be the negative term and my 2 to be the positive one? So that when I FOIL this back out, I'll have my 2 minus my 5, which will give me my negative 3. Don't forget the 2. The 2 must be part of the final answer because it was part of the original problem. So here is your complete factorization for problem number 4. Now, when you look at problem number 5, first of all, it is not a trinomial. Problems 1 through 4 have 3 terms. Trinomials. This is not a trinomial. So it is going to be approached differently. It's a different kind of problem. All right, but step 1 remains the same. Remember what we did over here? We observed that we had a greatest common factor, a GCF. Look here, do we have a greatest common factor? I believe we do. 18 and 8. 2. X cubed and X. X. Y and Y to the 5th. Y. I'm taking out everything that is common to both terms. Now, what is left? If I pull out a 2, I'm left with a 9. If I pull out 1x, I'll be left with x squared. If I pull out a y, I have no y's left in that first term. Minus. All right, here we go. I'm going to pull out a 2 from an 8. I'm going to pull out an x from an x, gone. And I'm going to pull out a y from a y to the 5th, leaving me with y to the 4th. Now, you are not done. Did you notice that the directions said factor completely? So we weren't done in problem number 4 when we pulled out the 2. We are not done in this problem when we pull out the 2xy. We now have to deal with this. This is called the difference of squares. And if you have studied Algebra 1, then you know the difference of squares factors as a plus b, a minus b. In other words, if you have a squared minus b squared, a square minus a square, the difference of squares, it factors as a plus b, a minus b. So when I look at this, I don't have a's and b's. It's a little bit trickier than that. What do I have? Well, what's the square root of 9x squared? 3x. What's the square root of 4y to the 4th? 2y squared. One of them's plus, one of them's minus, every single time. That's how you factor the difference of squares. Don't forget the 2xy in the beginning of the problem. Now that is something I hope you remember. It's taught in every first-year algebra class. Hopefully you remembered it. Let's try one more example, and then we will be done with this. So here we go. X to the 5th minus 9x cubed y squared. All right, step 1. First of all, it's not a trinomial. So we're hoping it's the difference of squares. But it sure isn't right now. But remember, what's the first step? Always factor out what you can. So let's see. Looks like I can take out an x cubed, and that's it. Nothing else in common, so I'm going to pull out an x cubed. If I take an x cubed out of an x to the 5th, I'll be left with x squared. 9. Now remember, I pulled out the x cubed, so that's gone, and all I have left is my y squared. Is this the difference of squares? Why, yes it is. So that's going to factor as x minus 3y, x plus 3y. And there, excuse me, is the answer to the question. All right, good luck.